with them and you pass away, yes, they'll take you. But if you have not already signed up to university, and I think UK is the same way, I think they're not taking any new requests right now.
People donate their body and they won't take it. Who would ever think that?
Yes.
She had day hours today.
Mm-hmm.
She went back to paperwork and we were looking, and the systems have changed. So
Mhm.
1986 until now.
Right.
They couldn't find any record.
Oh, my
of
goodness.
taking that, so they wouldn't take her and try to find a program at another university. And we ended up being it down to that University of Tennessee.
No, they're not, so, okay, well, good, at least she got her wish. Not the same school, but yeah, but it is, it's all about paperwork. So, and then anything like that, whether it's body bequeathal, prearranged funeral, anything dealing with any legal matters, please make sure you have either a secure place in your home to keep those. If you put those in a lockbox at the bank, things like just make sure that somebody, your executor, executrix, next of kin, whomever, power of attorney knows where those papers are, because it can save a lot of headache when the death has occurred if you can't find anything. And I mean, we've had people call here and they say, we know Mom had a prearranged funeral with you all. Well, ma'am, we don't have anything on file. And and I said, can you all find anything at the house? Maybe we have misfiled something here at the funeral home. No, we can't find anything. And I said, and then a lot of times it's a person will think, well, I'm going to think about prearranging my funeral, but they never do. And so then they have to start from scratch. But please encourage anybody to hold on to their paperwork. It sure make everybody's life a lot easier when a death has occurred. Other questions, please. Have I just completely driven you all crazy, or am I doing okay?
Not Angela, she's got another
Come on,
question.
Angela.
My question is, because I've been here before, different cultures. How do you?
Good question. Here at this funeral home, we serve not only Caucasian families, we do serve African American families. A lot of the African American families still have the traditions as we white folk do. With visitation, church funeral, funeral home funeral, go to the cemetery. Louisville, as you all well know, is becoming a very diverse city.
Yes.
Here we serve the Bosnian community. In the Butyl area, where there is a mosque over on 6 Mile Lane, there's several mosques all over town. That's what they call it. With the Bosnian community, it's very simple as far as their final disposition. They're never cremated. What they do, we pick the body up at the place of death, bring it here into our care. If it is a male who died, male members of the mosque, along with the imam, who is their clergy person, come and bathe the body. They then therefore wrap the body in a shroud and tie it in about 2 or 3 different places. They place the body in the casket themselves, which is a very simple cloth-covered casket. Then what we do is maybe a day later, we take the person over to the mosque. They take the body out of the car. They set it on a little rolling church truck in their parking lot, have prayers for maybe 15 minutes. We load the body back up, we process to the cemetery. For years, the Bosnians were buried in a section of Walnut Ridge Cemetery over in Jeffersonville. So we would process over there. They now have purchased property over here on Fagan Bush Lane. If you go to Mercy Academy, you've gone too far, but it's on the left, and it backs up to what is Rest Haven Cemetery, but it's not part of Rest Haven. It's their own cemetery. So that's where they are being buried now. Jumping back, if it's a female member of the Bosnian community, the women come in, bathe the body, and shroud her, and place her in a casket. We are now seeing a lot of Bhutanese, Hindu. You all remember reading about the 3 young men that tried to run the train up here, Butyl, and they all 3 died. We had all 3 of them here, not at the same time. Their tradition is there is no embalming. The body is bathed and dressed and placed just into a simple cardboard viewing casket. We used to do everything right here in the chapel. They come in at a specific time, view the body, have some prayers, and then we go to the crematory with them. They're cremated. So that's the way we did those 3 young men that sadly tried to beat that train. In the Jewish community, now we do not serve Jewish families here at this funeral home. Not that we wouldn't, but they do have their own funeral home here in town. It's called Herman Meyer Funeral Home. The Meyer family are Jewish, and they've taken care of the Jewish families for many years. I do know in their culture as well, if the family is Orthodox or Reformed, no, Orthodox or conservative, they try to do everything within 24 hours. There's no embalming. They have a group of men or women called the Shevra Kadisha who come to the funeral home, bathe and shroud the body, always close caskets. Either the funeral's at the funeral home or at the temple of choice. There are how many congregations in the loop? Anshi Sephard over on Dutchman's Lane is the Orthodox synagogue. Taylorsville Road, Knesset Israel, and Adath Jeshurun on Woodburn are conservative. The Reformed congregation is what we call the Temple out on Brownsboro Road. And folks that are members of the Temple, I've been to funerals. We had neighbors several years ago that were Jewish. The caskets were closed, but we went to the Temple there on Brownsboro Road for the funeral service. And theirs were done 3 or 4 days later.
Temple Shalom on Low Road.
I forgot about that. Which one is?
They're on Low Road, and I think they are part of the most liberal.
Okay, they're Reformed as well.
Yeah, now this is a gerontology group, so I will say that the couple that formed Temple Shalom, actually their last name is Kling, as in David and Margot Kling, who David is the son of Arthur Kling of the Kling Center.
Okay. I do know that, I forgot about Temple Shalom. Rabbi there, his name is Stanley Miles. He is Jerry Abramson's brother. So yeah, in Jewish culture, there's a lot of things are different as well. Jumping back to the Bosnian community that we serve, when we get to the cemetery, and they don't recognize women very well. The men take care of, being pallbearers, taking the body to the gravesite. Women all have to stay way over here. They can't get up real close. Then the body.
Even if it's a woman? Even if it's a woman, okay.
Yeah, the men still do everything, and the women have to stay back.
Okay.
The body is buried, placed in the ground, in the vault. Then they, in the Jewish tradition, like to shovel dirt on top. So we have a couple little spades that we provide, and then folks come up, whoever want to, and put dirt on top of the casket. The Jewish tradition is done the same way. First time I saw that, a college professor in Lexington that died, and he was Jewish. We were very close, and I went to his funeral, and we went to the Lexington Cemetery, where the Jewish section is. And being around a funeral home all my life, I thought I would have known this, but I didn't, I guess. So family, once the rabbi finished, the family was they got up first to put shovels of dirt on top of Dr. Musnik, and then everybody else who wanted to could come up and do it as well. So we have different cultures do things differently, they really do. Yes, ma'am.
So embalming's not required, it's just preservation technique?
It's based for preservation. A lot of cultures, like to say with the Jewish tradition, Bosnian, Hindu, things like that, Bhutanese, we do not do embalming. If you're having a traditional funeral here, you do not need to be embalmed. But I had a family, as a matter of fact, this is a family, we're having a funeral at 12 noon today for this gentleman at our home in Jeffersontown. I spoke to his wife earlier in the week before he died, and she said, I really don't want him embalmed. And I said, okay then, but I said, are you wanting an open casket? She said, well, we would like to if you think he still looks presentable, because he had Alzheimer's and he had Parkinson's disease, passed away at home. And I told her, I said, you need to think about this, because if we have an open casket viewing for an unembalmed body, and I was very frank with her, I said, you're gonna have decomposition, you may have body physically changes that are being made as you are viewing. And I said, do you want to subject your friends, family, and neighbors to seeing that? She says, by all means, no. She hadn't really thought about it. So, so when he passed away this week, then she said, no, I do want to do the embalming. So, you know, yes, your answer is correct. You do not have to have embalming, but there are times when it's suggested, and we need to. We need to. Also, I'll be right with you. Let's talk about it now real quick while it's on my little simple pea-brain mind. If a body needs to be shipped someplace, for instance, within the Bosnian community. Some of those people over the years have wanted to go back to Sarajevo for burial, or wherever their little area, their town is in Bosnia. When we ship a body overseas, there's a lot of red tape that's involved, and it usually takes about 3 weeks, probably, from the time we receive that body until we get all the paperwork documented to get that person on a plane. So in that case, that Bosnian person does need to be embalmed. It's required by every foreign country has rules and regulations handling deceased human remains. They tell us, yes, you have to have embalming. Here's the type casket you have to have. You have to have, it has to be hermetically sealed. You have to have statements from doctors, coroners, the funeral director, the state consulates, all the way down the line. And that's why it takes sometimes close to 3 weeks as far as shipping a person back to Bosnia. Then, now I do know in the Jewish tradition, which they normally do not do embalming, folks that are, say, may have passed away at their winter home in Florida, but they want to come back to Louisville to the Jewish funeral home, they're basically packed in dry ice, which is okay with the airlines. It's a little bit different, but going to a foreign country, then we do have to have the embalming. We've shipped bodies to Bosnia, we've shipped bodies to the Philippines, Mexico. Yeah. Question there.
How long does a body stay preserved if you don't embalm?
If you don't embalm,
Yes.
within a matter of like 24 hours or so, there could be decomposition setting in. You have to think about it. I mean, you just kind of realize our body is made up of acids and things like that, and fluids, and those things start to stink because they wreak havoc. And it's so sad that if a family experiences a death, and let's just say the person hadn't been found for 4 or 5 days, and it happens a lot. Situations like that, we're not able to embalm. The person has just been dead so long that we have to externally prepare the body, which we have some embalming powders that we can use for the external part of the remains, not anything chemically. Then the person is placed in what we call a disaster pouch, basically, and then that's placed in a casket. So, but that happens sadly more often than not when a person hasn't been found for, they may have lived alone, might have been kind of like a hermit type person, and yes, and so cannot be a pretty sight sometimes.
I had worked with a young Cuban woman who taught me a lot about the Cuban culture, and it may be Hispanic totally, or maybe just Cuban. when a person dies, they will not leave the body alone. That a family member will stay with that body wherever it is, funeral home, church, whatever, from the point of death until interment.
That's also true of rural areas. A lot of the rural areas are the same.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean,
And military, and military.
Years ago, I'm from Lawrenceburg, I may have told you that. We experienced that years ago, like when I was kind of just getting my feet wet around the funeral home, folks would say, can we stay up all night with Dad? We would also take people back home. You know, back in Lawrenceburg, a lot of people had homes big enough that we could get a casket through the front door. You know, then they would keep, you know, we would have a visitation at the house. Folks would stay up with them, you know, for two or 3 days, and then we would go to church or whatever. So, but of course, a lot of that is, we don't see as much of that here in Louisville as we would in the rural areas. So that's for sure. That's for sure. Yes, ma'am.
What has like motivated you, inspired you to get into this kind of work? And what do you think it takes to do this kind of work?
Weird, I guess, right?
And how long have you been doing
Good
it?
question.
We're all weird too,
No,
though.
well, no, most everybody of like my generation more than likely have either had family in the funeral service industry or they just at an early age kind of became interested in it. My grandfather was not a licensed funeral director. He was a farmer. But the funeral home that he was associated with, it was owned by some old guys there in Lawrenceburg, and they were stockholders in the funeral home, so to speak. Well, they still had one of the gentlemen, one of the owners, he was the licensed funeral director in the Bomber, and he and his wife lived upstairs. So, and in those days, you did not have cell phones, you did not have pagers, you didn't have an answering service, so somebody had to hang around that place 24/7. So they lived upstairs, his wife was a school teacher, but whenever they wanted to go anywhere, then one of us kind of had to hang out in their apartment while they were gone. So I guess I started going up there with him when I was about 12 or 13 years old. And things were different there. We didn't have a big chapel. It was an old Victorian house built in 1894. So the rooms, of course, had huge tall ceilings, but they weren't big rooms. So we still had to set up chairs for all the visitations, you know, things like that. So that's kind of what I started out doing, setting up chairs. Got to go out back and wash the hearse every now and then, wash off the family cars. And then, so then I just kept working there, junior high school in the summers and the afternoons if they were busy. When I went away to college, then I was in Lexington, so I wasn't too far away, obviously, 30-minute drive. If they were busy, I would go back home and help them out on the weekends, and in the summers as well. So my parents did not want me to be a funeral director because at that time, here again, as I said earlier, it was very confining. You didn't have the freedom to, oh, I've got my pager, I've got my cell phone, let's divert the phones to the answering service and go out and have a bite of dinner. So, you know, they kept saying, David, you know, you realize you're going to be confined, da-da-da-da-da. So after graduation, I did do some accounting work for 2 years. I literally hated it. I already knew that I was a people person, and I had just fallen in love with funeral service. So I opted not to stay in Lawrenceburg. So I came to Louisville in winter of 1981. And one of the guys here who was on our staff at the time worked at Arch Hetty's over on Taylorsville Road, where the new Goodwill store is now. And basically, I knocked on his door and he hired me. So Marty and I worked together over there from 81. And then, like I say, Arch, who owned the Hetty Funeral Homes, sold to the Dignity Conglomerates out of Houston, Texas, the 1st of November of 1994. So Marty and I stayed with Dignity for 2 years. And then in 96 or 97, maybe 97, Jim Ratterman, who owns this funeral home, created a spot for both of us because we wanted to stay with family owned. So in either 96 or 97, I came to Ratterman's. Been here ever since. And Ratterman's all the Rattleman funeral homes, there are 7 in town. But now, like Jim, who has this funeral home with his sons, we also have the one in J-Town that used to be the old Foreman Funeral Home. It's the corner of Rupp Creek on Taylorsville Road. Those 2 are ours. This one and that one are ours. Other cousins have the one in Middletown and the one on Lexington Road. Another set of cousins have the one on Southside Drive. Jim's brother Tony has the 2 at Market Street and King Road. So 5th generation of Rattleman since 1864, still family owned by different members of the family. So that's kind of made me.
I have to kick in one other experience. My cousin, who is a little bit older than we are, maybe 5 or 7 years older than me, also decided to become a funeral director. And I remember at his high school graduation out in rural Kentucky, all the aunties and uncles are gathered around and they say, "And what do you want to do when you grow up?" "I want to be a funeral director."
Was that Bob?
That was Bobby.
Brown.
Yeah. And you couldn't imagine what all the family did when and you know why he liked that? He wanted to do that? It was because in those days, at the funeral home, they used the hearse as like an ambulance now, like an EMS. And it was exciting. And so he could never attend family functions because he was always driving the hearse.
Well,
And-
that's a point that you brought up, Becky. Like growing up in Lawrenceburg, we had an actual ambulance at the funeral home. Because there were no EMTs, there was no big ambulances like we see today. The ambulance service in all towns was operated by the local funeral homes. So, you'd get a call, there's been an accident out on I-64 or so-and-so needs to be taken to the Frankfurt Hospital and she's not doing well, and then we'd go out and get the ambulance and go do our thing.
It was the thrill of it all.
But I'm looking back on those days, we had no medical training to save, we didn't know CPR or any of that. The only thing I could do is get in the back and put an oxygen mask on them and hope for the best. Get them to the hospital and hopefully they made it. But thank heavens that we've come a long way,
Exactly.
yeah. But at any rate, that's kind of my background. So.